So we are back to the laws of Shabbat after a small break for the laws of Sukkot, and we are up to chapter 27, talking about Piku'ach Nefesh and the laws of actually breaking Shabbat to save a life. So the principle is actually written in the Torah in Vayikra chapter 18, verse 5. Saving a life overrides Shabbat, as the Torah states, "Keep my decrees and laws, which a person shall do and live by. I am the Lord." I'm very happy that this is gender neutral, because in the Torah it says "v'chai b'hem," which is sounds like it's talking to males, but in English we can do gender neutral because it includes both men and women. And the sages expound. This is in Yoma, which is about Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, in even more than Shabbat. Just for example, on Shabbat, you're allowed to move muktzeh for the place, like a Shabbos table. But on Yom Kippur, since you're not going to eat on the Shabbos table, you're not even allowed to move that muktzeh. And so the sages expound on Yom Kippur: live by and not die by. The mitzvot of the Torah were given so that people may live by them, not die to fulfill them. So every mitzvah, we'll see that there's exclusion of three, but the three do not include Shabbat. Um, with those exclusions, we break every single law of the Torah in order to save a life. Not only to save a life, but even attempt to save a life, and that's the next paragraph. We desecrate Shabbat to attempt a rescue, even if the chances of its success are slim. Thus, we desecrate Shabbat to bring someone medication, even if it works only in only a small percentage of cases, and even if it is an experimental drug that might not be effective. So, for example, intravenous, not all the drugs for cancer work, and so even though we are drawing blood or causing somebody to bruise when we insert the needle, that is allowed. And actually, this is much, much deeper than what's written here. In the Kuzari and other places, the philosophy of Judaism is compared to a pharmacist. And so the Kuzari brings a beautiful parable about why the other religions did or didn't work for people. And it says that basically the pharmacist was ill one day, and somebody took his place and said, I'll pretend to deliver medicine for the people coming to buy medicine. And so he gave all kinds of medicines, even though he had no clue what he was giving. And then one of the medicines worked for somebody by chance or by fate. And so everybody wanted that medicine, even though they had a different illness. So in my opinion, that is a perfect explanation of even if something is not effective in all cases, Judaism is so open-minded that we allow it to be experimented on, and even something as much as amulets, good omens that people used to carry. It didn't work for everybody, but the Talmud talks about a tooth of a fox and the nail from somebody who was crucified, to carry it on Shabbat, even in a place where there's no eruv, because it has helped people to save their life or to lengthen their life, and that's what they believed in. I'm not sure what the proper comparative amulet is today, but the idea of carrying in a place where there's no eruv, something that is only somewhat questionable that it works, is allowed according to Halacha. I think extends to even that. So, because like I said, it is in the Shulchan Aruch. However, we do not desecrate Shabbat to acquire a drug if there is no substantive reason to think that it might help. So basically, if you have a headache, you don't buy something that's for a stomach ache. And that's just a simple understanding. In case of uncertainty, we still desecrate Shabbat. For example, if a building collapses, either because of earthquake or other reasons, and we do not know whether anyone was inside, even if someone was inside, we do not know whether they are alive or not, we clear away the rubble on Shabbat despite the uncertainty. The act of clearing rubble, mefakchim et hagal, lends its name to the general category of Piku'ach Nefesh, which overrides Shabbat. So Piku'ach literally means to oversee or to inspect, and so because we are inspecting the rubble, the rubble, we have that name for Shabbat and for Yantiv, and that is the halacha. Even if a rescue attempt fails, God rewards all who made an effort. Similarly, if several people drove to different places to obtain a certain medicine that someone needed, they are all receive the divine reward, even though some of them traveled for naught. During October 7th, there were people who drove an ambulance, even though they didn't know for sure that they'll be able to get to anybody and save them. And once again, even though one may desecrate Shabbat to save a sick person, one who knows that he will need to care for a dangerously sick person on Shabbat should prepare as much as possible beforehand to minimize the melachot he will perform on Shabbat, since one must prepare for Shabbat before Shabbat. So if somebody is an ambulance driver, they should have bandages already with the medicine on it. If it is uncertain whether one will need to care for a sick person on Shabbat, it is good for them to prepare before Shabbat, though it is not obligatory. For instance, if one sometimes is called upon to care to the wounded, they should preferably prepare adhesive and cloth bandages before Shabbat so that they will not have to cut them on Shabbat. It is good for a woman who is due to give birth to prepare her hospital bag before Shabbat. Again, not obligatory, but good and appropriate. If the expectant couple is planning to drive on to the hospital, not in their car, they should preferably remove unnecessary items from the car before Shabbat. However, the expectant mother does not need to spend the Shabbat near her due date close to the hospital, as that is an excessive burden that one is not required to undertake on Friday. If she has to travel to the hospital on Shabbat, she may do so, since saving life overrides Shabbat. And I'll just give a personal observation. All of my kids were born on Shabbat or on Yantiv, and so the one that was born on Yantiv, I guess we weren't as prepared, but the ones that we were for Shabbat, the first one, instead of being in Shalvim for Shabbat, we were in Jerusalem, and the taxi driver was a non-Jew, organized before Shabbat on the occasion that we have to go, and the second one was born on Shabbat. We were living in Beersheba, and the hospital in Beersheba already had our file, and so all we had to do was call a taxi, and so we didn't have to travel on Shabbat, except for from our house to the hospital. But like Rabbi Melamed said, if you do live somewhere else, you don't have to be on Shabbat close by to the hospital, because it is the same idea of traveling and desecrating Shabbat for saving a life. And we'll stop here and open up for questions.